About the first, he answers first. About the last, he answers last. And about what he has not heard, he says I have not heard and acknowledges the truth. The opposite of a wise man is a brute. What does this word mean? In the world of butterflies, there is the cocoon stage. First, a type of caterpillar emerges from its shell. It enters the cocoon and then transforms into a butterfly. That is why it is called a butterfly. It emerges first from the shell and then from the cocoon. The word cocoon means something that has potential but has not yet taken on a final form. When we say that something is matterpra, what do we mean by that? It is something crude that can still be developed, molded. In the same way, ancient sages say that there are people who are like matterpra. This is not an insult or contempt, as is the common use of the word today. When they say that someone is brute, they mean that this person has not yet developed, has not expressed his full potential, has not gone from potency to action. They list 7 characteristics of a brute person and 7 of a wise man. A wise man does not speak before someone who is greater than him in wisdom or age. It is written about Haman that he was quick to interject. A fool is the first to jump in. A wise person may have something to say, but if he sees that there is someone older or wiser than him present, he should not be the first to speak, even if he has something relevant. If there is a question, priority should be given to the most respectable, the most experienced. And even when it is someone who is just older in age, one must respect him, because age generally brings with it more life experience. It is important to know how to listen to elders. Talk to them, listen to their wisdom, receive advice. This is something great. Therefore, a wise man does not speak before someone who is greater than him in wisdom or age. Another characteristic is that a wise man does not interrupt his companion's speech. The wise highlight this as a sign of refinement in speech. If someone is talking to you, even if you think that everything he says is wrong and you have the right answer, do not interrupt him. Let the other person finish the sentence and only then speak. This shows education and culture. Furthermore, how many times did we think we knew what the other person was going to say, and when they finished speaking, we realized that we had misunderstood? If we interrupted them, we would still be in the wrong. Today, it has become customary to interrupt others in the middle of their speech with an excuse for interrupting, as if that gave them permission to do whatever they want. Don't apologize, just don't interrupt. Let the other person finish and only then say what they have to say. Not interrupting the other person is a sign of wisdom. Another characteristic of a wise person is that they do not rush to answer. If they are asked a question, they think before answering. When someone has barely finished asking a question, they answer right away. This is rushing to answer, wanting to show that they know how to do it, but a wise person thinks about it. Maybe on second thought they will say something else or formulate their words better so that they are better accepted. This is a trait of the art of someone who masters speech. Giving yourself a second to think before answering. Not rushing to answer. They ask coherently and answer correctly. That is, when it comes to a topic, he stays focused on what is being discussed, and does not deviate from the subject. Tradition has it that once the students were sitting before a great teacher, the editor of the Mission. One of his students, who later became an important figure, was present, as was his older relative, who was close to the teacher. During the Sabbath law class, the young student asked something about another topic, about phylacteries, and the older student said to him, "How many times have I told you that we never ask about another topic during class? If it were not for this teacher being so great, you would have embarrassed him." Quote, sometimes a person's mind is completely focused on the subject at hand. If you throw this focus into another topic, even if he can answer, he will not answer with the same clarity as if it were about the topic studied. Therefore, do not change the subject in the middle of a discussion, especially when it is about study or important topics. Finish one topic, then move on to the next. Another characteristic. The wise man answers first what was asked first and then what was asked last. If someone enters a house and is asked, "Did you see Isaac on the stairs? And what do you intend to do tomorrow?" Quote, if he is wise, he answers in order. Regarding Isaac, "Did I see him or didn't I? And as for tomorrow, I intend to do this and that." If he inverts the order, putting his answer about himself before the question about the other, it shows that he is not wise. Answering in the correct order shows mastery over what is being said, mental organization, mastery over information. And about what he has not heard, he says, I have not heard. They ask something about any subject, religion, profession, science. And if he does not know, he does not try to hide it. A fool tries to appear to know everything and ends up answering without meaning. A wise man is not ashamed to say I do not know. He needs to study, research, verify. Saying I have not heard or I do not know shows honesty and wisdom. Recognizing the truth is also one of the signs of wisdom. In the verse we read, wisdom is found on the lips of the wise. We explain that those who are wise soon speak wisely, but the classical commentator adds, when someone corrects someone, they will not know what they are saying. The wise man recognizes and says, I have sinned. The wise man knows how to admit the truth. He says, I have sinned. Those who think they never make mistakes are not wise. The truly wise man knows that he is not perfect. When he makes a mistake, he recognizes it. There are couples who argue for a long time because of something in which one of the parties knows, deep down, that he is wrong, but cannot say, I am sorry, I was wrong. What is so difficult about that? When someone comes down from their pedestal and recognizes their mistake, saying, I am sorry, I was wrong. This shows that he is a wise person who understands things. What does this have to do with wisdom? At first glance, it seems to be just a trait of humility. Why? Because King Solomon includes this characteristic in the concept of wisdom. The wise men of the ancient tradition, in the treatise Ethics of the Fathers, also include the recognition of the truth as a sign of wisdom. But, apparently, this would belong more to the definition of humility. A person willing to give up their own pride, to give in and say, you are right, I was wrong. This is undoubtedly linked to humility. But Solomon and the wise men of Michina are teaching us that this is also a sign of wisdom. A wise man is one who sees what is coming, who thinks one step ahead. If you have made a mistake and insist on maintaining your position, what will come of it? If the other person knows you are wrong and still sees that you are wrong, this only creates distance. Later, when you need something from your spouse, all that resentment, frustration and bitterness for having persisted in a mistake comes to the surface. The contempt that a person receives, including socially, is a loss. It is not only in the spiritual aspect that he loses, but also in the practical world. Therefore, someone who is truly wise and can foresee the consequences, you see, it is better to admit now that I made a mistake than to spend 2 days arguing, knowing that the fault was mine. Each person can express this in his own words. One may say, I made a mistake. Another may say, I apologize. Another, I am sorry. Or I simply thought one way, but now I see that it is different. There are many ways to convey this message. In one of his letters, Maimoni describes that God can testify about him. He is more happy when someone shows him that he made a mistake than when someone confirms that he was right. Most people act the opposite way. When they say something and someone proves that they were right, they are pleased and grateful. But if someone proves that they were wrong, they get angry. Maimoni denies that this is not the case with him, because he seeks the truth, not his own ego. He is more happy with those who correct him, because if no one corrected him, he would remain in that error. The one who corrected him took him off the wrong path and put him back on the right path. That is a reason for joy. Now, if someone brings proof that he was right, he thanks them, but affirms, even without that proof, I already had that understanding. You just reinforced what I knew. Thank you for confirming it. But true joy, true gratitude, is toward the one who showed him that he was wrong, because that person saved him from continuing in error. This is the greatness of someone who, according to the wise men and according to King Solomon, demonstrates wisdom by recognizing the truth. And the opposite of all this is in the brutish person, the opposite of the wise. Let us delve a little deeper into the understanding of this minna, because there is something here that requires explanation. Probably, when I read the excerpt from the Michan, some must have wondered. The Mikna begins with the words 7 characteristics of the fool and 7 of the wise. Then it gives the entire list of characteristics of the wise and only at the end it says, the opposite of this is in the fool. But why does the Michina begin by saying, 7 characteristics of a fool and 7 of a wise man? If so, either start directly with 7 of a wise man and then describe, the wise man does not speak before someone who is more experienced, etc. Or if you started by saying 7 characteristics of a fool and 7 of a wise man, then talk first about the fool, that the fool speaks before someone who is older, that he interrupts, etc. Why does it begin by mentioning the fool, but only later detail the wise man? The commentators explain here something wonderful that we also bring up in the commentary on the treatise Ethics of the Fathers. The Mishnah is teaching the following: do not expect to be born a perfect person. Every person at the beginning presents 7 characteristics of a fool. The fact that you notice in yourself that you talk over others, that you interrupt in the middle of speaking, that you rush to respond, can it give you the feeling that I am a fool? And the Mishnah's answer is, do not be alarmed. Everyone at the beginning is like that. 7 characteristics of a fool. That is the starting point. The next step is 7 characteristics of a wise man. Little by little, with effort, you work on yourself. You change, examine yourself, observe yourself. Here I have already improved. Here I still need to improve. And so you move forward. Over time, you can become a complete sage, but no one is born an angel. Sometimes a person feels disappointed in himself. Why do I have this impulse? Why do I have this desire, this anger or some other instinct? And he begins to see himself as someone who is worthless, as someone small, negative. But this is not true. The fact that someone has a negative inclination, a desire or an attraction, even for serious things that the Torah itself prohibits, does not mean that this person is problematic or bad. If a person feels that he was born with a very strong inclination towards something forbidden, this does not make him inferior. On the contrary, he should say to himself, this is the exercise equipment that the Creator gave me to strengthen me, to overcome the impulses and become someone better, to conquer the world to come. One has a desire in one area, another in another. One has impulses of anger, another of greed. That's okay, each has their own challenges. Having an inclination is not the problem. The problem is when a person gives in to the impulse, when they surrender to desire, when they accept remaining in this inferior state. That's where the mistake lies. This is also the secret of the verse that says, the righteous man falls 7 times, but he gets up. He is called righteous even when he falls because he gets up. He falls because he has desires and challenges, but he gets up, he does not accept the fall. In the end, he remains standing. It is like a child learning to walk. He falls and gets up. He falls and gets up until he learns once and for all. And this applies to all areas of life. That is why the Mishnah also begins with 7 characteristics of the fool and only then talks about those of the wise. A wise person is one who always remembers the phrase, life and death are in the hands of the tongue. And he knows that peace in the home depends on the way he speaks. The education of children, whether they will be respectful or rebellious, depends on the way he communicates with them. If a father or mother speaks to their children in a humiliating way, they may even be saying the right things, but if they do so with contempt, with aggression, with offenses, the effect will be disastrous. As Rav Vbe once said, the child it's like a spring. The more you press it, the further it will fly when it's released. On the other hand, you can't let the child do whatever he wants. The right approach is balance. As tradition says, the left hand pushes away and the right hand brings closer. The left hand, which symbolizes the limit, should be used gently. The right hand, which represents acceptance, should be used strongly and intensely. The child needs both closeness and limits, but the affection should be greater and more intense, while the limits should be more gentle. This is the ideal balance between closeness and limits. Even when you impose a limit, it should never be with humiliation. That's why Mitchen says that respect for your student should be as dear as your own respect. The child is like a student and has his own dignity. Just as you wouldn't like to receive criticism in a humiliating way, the child doesn't either. If he is corrected with contempt or offensive words, even though he is a child, he feels it. He has dignity. Speak to him with respect, objectively. This is okay, this is not okay. This is right. This is wrong. Guide her. Sometimes it is necessary to apply punishment and that is okay, but if she grows up in an environment of love and affection, even when she is punished, she understands, she knows. My father loves me, praises me, supports me. Here I made a mistake. So he corrected me. Overall, she feels loved and cherished and this child grows up happy. and the main instrument of warmth and affection is speech. Parents who have a lot of money, thank God, but have no patience with their children. So they buy them whatever they want, cell phones, expensive games, just so they don't bother them. And then, when the children grow up, the parents don't understand why they are so distant, so cold, because they have no connection with them. I gave him everything that I myself never received from my parents, because he sees me as a stranger. The answer is because he has never seen their heart. A child needs to see their parents' hearts, to feel that they are loved, and the heart expresses itself a lot through speech. If he hears words of affection, praise, appreciation, if the parents pay attention to their creations, they give advice, it flourishes. The same goes for marriage. Maimon describes that a man should respect his wife more than himself and love her as himself. Part of this love is expressed in speech. Knowing how to talk to her, having a listening ear, offering support, encouragement, the right words at the right time. This makes the relationship flourish. It brings joy to life. Yesterday, a man approached us in the evening when we were leaving a certain place and said that his wife wants a divorce. She has many complaints about him. The situation is not good. I told him, write down 3 things for yourself. And this is something important for any couple. The wife in relation to the husband and the husband in relation to the wife. One should not reach a point of almost divorce because of tension in the relationship. A wise person should write down for himself 3 things that are the main complaints of the other side. What my wife complains about most, I told him. Check which 3 points are repeated. There are things that happen from time to time, but usually when you reach a situation of almost divorce, this indicates that there is a problem that repeats itself over and over again, to the point that she can no longer bear it and breaks down. No one wants to get divorced, but she gets to this point because, apparently, the situation has become unbearable. Write down 3 things that your wife constantly complains about and say to yourself, even though I'm sure she's wrong, I'm going to change that. I'm going to take it up a notch. And usually, if we observe, most of the complaints that women have about their husbands are related to speech. For example, you raise your voice when you speak. You don't talk to me enough, you don't have time for me. What does this mean? That you don't sit down to talk to me. A fairly common complaint. You are more attached to your mother than to me. He says to her, no way, my wife, I love you. But she can't always explain it. But if he filmed himself talking to his wife, nervous, tense, and suddenly the phone rings, it's his mother. Suddenly he becomes all gentle, sweet as honey. What words come out of his mouth? And his wife is devastated inside. Look at the way he talks to me and look at the way he talks to his mother. And he still tells me that he loves me as much as he loves her. She may not even be able to say to him, look at how you talk to me and how you talk to her. But he needs to pay attention. By the way, this applies to any man, especially in the first year of marriage, who should carefully examine how he talks to his wife and how he talks to his mother. Usually after marriage, not by chance. The Torah says that he should be exempt and make the wife he has taken for himself happy. The first year should be a total investment in the marriage. If you invest in the marriage in the first year, you will have peace for the rest of your life. If in the first year the man conveys the message to his wife that she is secondary, that there are things more important than her, work, mother, friends, then she will be tense for the rest of her life. Later, she will have to work hard to fix it. But if in the first year he sends her messages like, you are my priority, he has achieved more than anything. I respect you. You are the most precious thing to me. She will be calm, happy and satisfied with him for the rest of her life. And one of the criteria is how he treats his mother and how he treats his wife. She observes this. A man who gets married should observe how he talks to his wife and how he talks to his mother when she calls. Not that he should belittle his mother, but that he should increase his attention to his wife. The same gentle tone he uses to talk to his mother, he should also use with his wife. The same compliments he uses to his mother, he should also use with his wife. And, by the way, it is not good to talk too much to his mother in front of his wife, especially in the first year, until he becomes the master of the house. If he wants to sit down for half an hour and talk to his mother, he should do it when he is at work. If he is working in a place where he cannot talk on the phone, then, for the time being, by law, you can't waste time calling your mother. But if you're self-employed and have control over your own time, you should find a moment. But when you're with your wife, dedicate quality time to her. A man who notices that his wife complains about these 3 things should write them down and say, I want peace in the home. Starting today, I'm starting to change course. Even if I think she's exaggerating, even if she says we don't talk enough, and I think so. If she's saying it's lacking, it's because she's lacking it. Decide. Starting today, I'm going to dedicate 15 or 20 minutes a day to my wife with my cell phone turned off, and when she talks, justify what she feels. If a wife sits down and opens her heart to her husband, at work, they say I'm this way and that I'm late, that I'm not performing well. And he thinks, what does she want people to say? She's really like that. How will that help? Tell her, I understand, you really are difficult. You carry the weight of the house, and you also have the weight of work. Have you been spoken to rudely? Show understanding. You are offering acceptance. Life and death are in the hands of the tongue. This is the power of speech. A person needs to know how to control their speech. There is a fundamental rule. Not everything that is thought should be said, and not everything that is said should be written. There are people who have whatever comes to mind and comes straight out of their mouth. A person like that is not considered wise if they do not have control over their thoughts, over what should or should not be said. The ancient sages said, a word is worth 1 sela, which was a coin at the time, equivalent today to our $1, real, dollar, something like that. A word is worth 1 sela, silence is worth 2. In other words, remaining silent is worth more than speaking. There is an impulse within a person. He wants to speak, to express himself, to show that he understands, that he knows, that he is up to date on the subject. But it is better to remain silent. You will gain more from this. When a person masters his speech, masters the power of silence, he knows. If I speak now, it will generate an argument. I have something to say. I know I am right. I know my wife, I know my children, I know my coworker. I know exactly where this will lead, how it will unfold. So, even if I have something to say, I do not say it so as not to start a fight. And the reward for such a person is immense, not only in this world. In the Gemara it is written, whoever overcomes his own impulses also overcomes for himself all his sins. A Gemara tells the story of Rabbi Yehoshua, the son of Ravianta, who fell ill and was on the verge of death, in a terminal state in bed. One of the wise men of his generation, Rav P., who was one of the greatest of his time, came to visit him, saw his condition, and saw that he was already in a state of death, as they say, a matter of minutes before he leaves this world. So he said to his family, for the sake of his condition and for the time that remains, so that you can do everything in time, prepare the shrouds. He gave them this advice so that they could hurry according to the situation. In the end, however, that wise man was cured and came back to life. A Gemara relates that after that, when Rav Pei saw Rabbi and Rosua walking down the street, he would feel ashamed and cross to the other sidewalk. He thought, maybe he heard me telling them to prepare the shrouds. It's not pleasant, as if I had already considered him dead. When they told this to the wise man who was cured, he replied, he doesn't need to feel bad about it. He is right. I was indeed already dead. My soul had already left. Today, research calls this clinical death. And he said, I have arrived at the heavenly court, I was already up there. And indeed, in truth, my time to die had come. This was the moment that had been determined for me since before my birth. Every human being has a set time to die, and mine had arrived. But the saint, blessed be he, said to the higher court, since he has always overcome his own impulses, you too must not judge him harshly, return him to the world. Yes, in pure justice he should have died at that moment. But he spent his entire life giving in, avoiding arguments, willing to give in to keep the peace, to keep the union. So, since he did not demand his own rights harshly, you also must not demand the harshest judgment upon him. Now, return him to life. He has a wife, children, a family. That is why he said, there is no need to be offended. He, Rav P., was really right. And what does it mean to overcome your own impulses? Mainly silence when a person knows how to keep quiet, at the moment when it is necessary to keep quiet. Let us move on to the next verse. The wise conceal knowledge, but the mouth of the fool brings near ruin. In the previous verse, he said, on the lips of the understanding is found wisdom. In other words, a person who has discernment, you will always hear words of wisdom coming from his mouth. Meanwhile, the staff means a rod, is for the back of the foolish. Why does he mention a staff? Because you have to hit him on the back. The person who is foolish, who has no sensitivity, who has no heart, he does not feel. He does not know when to keep quiet, when to speak. Whatever comes to his mind, he lets it out. Only after he is beaten by life, after he suffers, does he begin to realize, I do not control my speech and it only harms me. That is why the King Solomon is saying, don't wait until you get beaten up by life before you start speaking wisely. While you're still young, while you still have your life ahead of you, while you haven't made any big mistakes yet. Be a wise person who speaks wisely. Educate yourself in the right way. That was about speech. In the next verse, the wise hide their knowledge. A wise person, what does it mean to hide? The difference between keeping and hiding. Keeping is a higher level than keeping. It's hiding in secret like a code, like a cipher. The wise hide their knowledge. They don't say everything they know. They know how to keep it inside. But here we're talking about knowledge, that is, words of wisdom. They are correct conclusions, refined thoughts. If you're really wise, even words of wisdom, you won't go around talking about it, just anywhere. You'll know when it's appropriate to say it and when it's not appropriate. Sometimes someone in the family dies, a grandfather, for example, and someone who is already, thank God, more connected to the study of Torah, who already has many teachings, much knowledge, says, but my family doesn't know anything, they are completely disconnected from the Torah, and now I am going to visit them in the house of mourning, during Shiva, the 7 days of mourning. They will ask me to say a few words of Torah. They know that I have returned to the path of faith, that I have something to share. After a person dies, everyone understands that there is a world to come. While he is alive, his mind is focused only on trivialities, vanities, and the desires of this world. But when someone dies and they sit down to mourn for 7 days, everyone understands. And now, what can we do for him? There is only one thing to do: recite blessings over food, study Torah, fulfill commandments, and perform good deeds. All of this is dedicated to the elevation of the soul of the one who has passed away. When someone dies, what do they say about him at the funeral? Did he know how to cook well? Everyone realizes that this is not a meaningful compliment. He was very rich, he had 10 houses. No one says this in funeral speeches. Everyone understands that this is not a true virtue. What do they value? He was a good person, he had a heart of gold, he helped others, he kept the commandments, he had fixed times for Torah study. Everyone understands that when a person reaches the next world, this is what accompanies him. That is why King Solomon also said, it is better to go to a house of mourning than to a house of feasting. One night you receive 2 invitations to 2 different places. You cannot be in both at the same time. In one, there is a wake, people sitting in mourning. They have invited you to go there and comfort the mourners. In the other, there is a wedding, and both are far away, one in Afula and the other in Bersba. You cannot go to both. You have to choose. The natural human impulse is to go to the house of feasting, to dance, to eat well, to be merry. But Solomon says, be wise, it is better to go to the house of mourning. Why? The verse ends with, and the living will take it to heart. You go to a wedding, you eat, you drink, you dance, but what do you take with you to life? Nothing. But when you go to the house of mourning, you suddenly realize, this person was with us. I knew him and now he is no longer. What did he take with him to the world to come? Now, all he has is a space of 1.5 meters, 2 meters, with a tombstone on top. And that's it, until the resurrection of the dead, that's where he will be. And what did he take with him? He didn't take the car, he didn't take the mansion, he didn't take the private pool. He took the Torah studies he did, the commandments he kept, the moments when he overcame his impulses, the acts of renunciation, the moments when he gave in, when he overcame his ego. The more spirituality a person had, that's what he takes with him. That's why, says Solomon, it is better to go incomplete, and the living will take it to heart. A wise person learns lessons, and here he continues. The wise hide knowledge. A person who is wise knows how to keep even true and right things inside himself. But the mouth of a fool brings imminent ruin. A person whose mouth is that of a fool, and a fool is more than just someone who is naive or silly, imminent ruin means that there is a hole, a trap, an abyss before him. In other words, his fall is very close. Even if you see him walking confidently now, the hole is right there in front of him. He will fall. Why? Because he does not know how to control his speech. The same goes for listening. When a person knows how to listen, as the wise men say, he does not interrupt the other, does not rush to answer, but listens to the end. He gains from this. The image he forms of the situation is more accurate, and others also take his words more seriously. If a son comes, a 15-year-old teenager, for example, and asks his father for something, in his opinion, he is talking completely nonsense. He is asking for something that is not logical, that has no chance of happening. But if you interrupt him in the middle saying, "Stop talking nonsense," or "There is no such thing," there is no point in discussing it, that son will leave hurt. But if you let him talk until the end, even if halfway through, you realize that what he is saying doesn't make any sense, still let him finish. When he finishes speaking, you respond calmly, show that you thought about what he said, that you reflected, and then say something like, "I understand that this is important to you because of such and such a reason." It is always good to show that you understood what he meant and then explain why it is not possible now. And so this child grows up with the feeling that they respected my opinion, they listened to me, in the end they didn't agree, but at least they didn't humiliate me. Listening is a very important thing. The same goes for marriage. A person who knows how to listen to the other side, even if in his opinion it is not practical, that it doesn't make sense, still listens, shows, "I am with you. I understand you." In fact, there is a legal rule in rabbinical courts, in judgments according to the Torah, in financial matters. Two sides come before the judge. For example, two partners who want to terminate a partnership or a dispute over loans, rent, any financial dispute between neighbors, acquaintances, etc. Each side presents its arguments. First the plaintiff speaks, then the defendant also has the right to speak. According to Jewish law, even when the judgment is clear to the judge, what is the required conduct in such a case? He must repeat the arguments of the parties. Why does the judge need to repeat what he heard? First, to make sure that he understood correctly. There are cases when you think you understood, but the other person meant something else. And when you repeat, he may say, "No, that's not exactly what I meant." So he adjusts, corrects, and the understanding reaches the right place. Second, by repeating, you show the parties that you are not just throwing words into the wind, that you have listened, understood the situation, have a clear picture, and have reached your conclusion based on that. This is a teaching aimed at the courts, but it applies to anyone at home. Sometimes you become a judge between two children who are fighting or in a disagreement between husband and wife or about any other subject. When a person listens, King David says, "When those who do me harm rise up against me, let my ears hear. Even those who want to harm me, who accuse me, who despise me, I listen. Perhaps there is something in what they are saying that I really need to correct." Quote. So far we have talked about the simple level of human speech, how much the control of speech, silence and listening can transform a person's life for the better. But there is an even deeper level, a level that touches on the spiritual dimension of creation. There is a verse that says, "And I will put my words in your mouth and cover you with the shadow of my hand to plant the heavens and lay the foundations of the earth." The Holy One, blessed be He, is saying to the human being, "I created the world with speech. Know that you too with your speech can change reality." For when we speak to another person about any object, we use the word davar, thing. Because davar comes from the same root as speak, that is, give me that which was created by speech. When a person speaks Hebrew, he speaks faith, even without realizing it. Even if he says, I am an atheist, but if he says, give me this thing, he is saying this davar without knowing it. Give me that which was created by divine speech. Give me this object means give me that which God wants to exist. That is why everything is called an object or desire, and everything is called davar, thing or word. And the Holy One, blessed be He, says, I created the world with speech and I gave you the power of speech in your mouth. Speech is a unique power of human beings that does not exist in animals. All the other senses, sight, hearing, locomotion, food, also exist in animals. But the beings of creation are divided into 4 categories: inanimate, vegetable, animal and speaking. If we did not have the power of speech, we would belong only to the category of animals, at a higher level. The fact that the Creator gave human beings the power of speech, not only for communication. We could very well get by without speech, as animals do, with gestures, sounds, noises. They get by, but God gave us the power of speech so that we could communicate with Him. As a consequence, we also gain the ability to communicate with each other. When a person studies Torah, God is speaking to him because he is reading what He said. And when a person prays, he is speaking to God. This communication is mutual. In the study of the Torah, He speaks to us. In prayer, we speak to Him. Prayer creates a connection. The word prayer, in Hebrew, tefillah, has the same letters as patilla, which means wick. Just as the wick connects the fire above with the wax or oil of the wick below, prayer connects the human being here in the material world with the King of the universe, with the Creator. Prayer is a powerful force. It can nullify decrees, save soldiers, solve life's problems. It is an immense power that God has placed in our mouths and we do not use this power. In the Gemara it is written that one of the wise men said to his companion, I have learned from my teachers that it is thanks to the pure breath of the mouths of children that the world continues to exist. What are these children? Children before religious adulthood who go to study Torah with their teachers in Jewish schools. He said, it is because of the breath of their mouths when they study Torah that the world is sustained. Just as oxygen, without it, human beings cannot live. Creation also cannot exist without Torah. As it is written in the verse, if it were not for my covenant, Torah, day and night, the laws of heaven and earth, I would not have established. The other wise man replied, what about us, and what about our learning? You praise the learning of children, and we are of no value? These men were Amorites, wise, extremely holy, with the power even to revive the dead. And yet, he asked, why only the learning of children? The other replied, the breath from the mouth of one who has not sinned cannot be compared to the breath from the mouth of one who has sinned. We, with all due respect, are great rabbis, but there is no righteous person on earth who does only good and does not sin. Every human being makes mistakes and needs to repent. A child, however, before the bar mitzvah is completely pure. When a child reads Psalms, when he studies Torah, the sound of his voice comes out with total purity. It is a vapor, a pure spiritual emission, without any blemish. The life force that this study produces in creation is much greater than that of an adult, even if he is a great rabbi. That is why it is so important that there be organizations for children in the synagogues on Saturdays. That the children gather, bring them, offer candy, hold raffles, have them recite psalms and at the end say a prayer for the soldiers of Israel. There are places where they open the sacred ark, pray with the children, tell a story of faith, teach laws and teachings adapted to their age. Many do this and it is something great, because the speech of these children has more power than the study of adults, more power than the study of young people in Torah academies. Yes, all study has great value, but as he said, our study is valuable, but it does not compare. Let us read the words of Rabbi of Voloshin in the book Nefes Haim. And the truth, without a doubt, is that if the entire world, from end to end, were to become empty, God forbid, even for a single instant, of the occupation and concentration on the Torah. In that instant all the worlds, upper and lower, would be destroyed, would become non-existent. God forbid. All the stars, all the galaxies or spiritual universes, everything would be nullified for a single instant without Torah. The Benish writes that this is the reason why when the sun sets on one side of the world, it rises on the other, and when it sets here, it rises there, so that there would always be someone studying Torah. This is, according to the Benishi, the reason why the Creator made the world this way. We also see in the ancient sages what the Torah is: power of speech. In the Tractate of Shabbat, page 33, it is written, "Because of vulgar and filthy words, many afflictions and severe decrees arise, and the young men of the enemies of Israel die." This expression, enemies of Israel, is a euphemism, an indirect way of referring, God forbid, to the young Jews themselves. When we hear that a soldier fell, that a young man died in an accident, and someone says, "It was at a party, it was at a club," the sages say, know that there is a cause for this. Because of vulgar speech, the filth that comes out of people's mouths, indecent jokes, swearing. The person says, "But what did I say? I was just joking." But by putting these words into the air, you pollute the environment. And this spiritual pollution in the air causes negative spiritual influences. On the other hand, if you study Torah, even for 5 minutes, if you read Psalms, study some law, listen to a lecture, you are keeping the world running, you are sustaining creation. This also applies as a remedy even for dreams. Let us read the words of the Talmud about the interpretation of dreams. In the Tractate of Barara, page 55a, it is written, Habianah, one of the sages of the Talmud, said, "There were 24 interpreters of dreams in Jerusalem, that is, people who really understood the subject. Not interpreters based on fantasies or fortune-telling, but real experts. They even made a living from this. People would go to them, pay them, and they would give accurate interpretations. The sages of Israel themselves recommended, go ask someone who understands dreams. We have spoken about this on another occasion, in more depth. There are 2 types of dreams. There are dreams that are simply an emotional release from the day. The mind relieves the tensions of the night. It is written about this, dreams speak vanity. There is no need to seek interpretation in these cases, but there are dreams with signs that indicate that they are authentic. The Gemara mentions criteria for knowing whether a dream is true. And when it is worth looking for someone who understands to interpret it positively. And Rabbi Bana said the following, I once had a dream and went to consult all 24 dream interpreters. One interpreted it one way, another, and all the meanings came true for me. Quote. And then he concludes with the verse, all dreams follow the mouth. In other words, the dream is like an unsolved riddle. And what will activate the way it comes true is speech, the way it is interpreted. A person can think, but what's the difference? One said this, another that. But it is clear that there is power in the word to shape and realize the dream according to what is said. It is an impressive force. The Gemara also relates that Bar Kapara said to Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, I dreamed that my nose fell off. Rabbi Yehuda replied, anger has been turned away from you, for the nose represents anger, as in the verse, and anger was kindled. In other words, a decree was annulled. He continued, then I saw in the dream that both of my hands were cut off. Rabbi Yehuda replied, you will become rich today. You work with your hands. Soon you will no longer need them. In other words, you will no longer depend on manual labor. Bar Kapara continued. But the dream did not end. After that, I saw that both my legs had been cut off. How does a person feel when he wakes up with a dream like that? Rabbi Yehuda replied, you will ride a horse. Today we would say, you will get a chariot and you will no longer have to walk. This is a demonstration of how a dream is interpreted for the good. That is why Zohar says, whoever dreams a dream should tell it to someone who loves him so that he may interpret it positively. But if he tells it to someone who hates him and he interprets it negatively, he will be harming himself. Once again we see the power of speech. All we need to do is add the words of Zohar, that the intention is to tell the dream to someone who loves you and who also knows that he must interpret it for the good. If you tell someone, I dreamed that I am dying, and he answers, you had better make a will before it happens. So what was the point of telling it? Tell it to someone who loves you and who knows that he must interpret it positively. In this way, the dream will also come true according to the interpretation. Here too we are talking about the most spiritual and profound aspect of the power of speech. And this also needs to be taken into account. When a person has mastered his speech, when he is an artist of the word, the sages say about the verse, "Do you truly speak righteousness?" Psalm chapter 58 verse 2. There is the literal meaning of the verse, but also the interpretive level. At the midrashic level, the sages teach, it is true, Raum comes from the word art, mat. In other words, what is the art of a person in this world? To play dumb, when they speak gossip, slander, or slander, pretend to be mute. I did not hear, I did not speak, I do not know what they are talking about. The sages continue. But what about the words of Torah? Should one also be silent? The answer is at the end of the verse. Speak justice, that is, correct, just, and good words. Speak those. True art is knowing when to be silent, when to speak, and how to express oneself. And in this way one can raise the quality of one's own life and that of everyone around one, living a better, happier, and more harmonious life. We dedicate these words of Torah for the protection of the people of Israel and the soldiers of Israel. And may the Eternal grant to all present here and to all who watch the fulfillment of all the desires of the heart for good. Amen. Yeah.